Story 1. I don't resent my parents, but they never gave me any physical affection or said I love you or hugged me. I broke the cycle with my children. I hug them and tell them I love you every day. Story 2. They inflicted psychological abuse on each other, which often spilled over onto me. My parents were married for 30 years but hated each other the whole time. My mother did not want a divorce because she feared my father would take everything, since she was the primary breadwinner. Seeing arguments nearly every day was exhausting, and I have serious trust issues as a result. Story 3. My mother told me it was no one's fault when I was raped. I said no, it was his fault. Story 4. I was forced to raise my sibling at the cost of my social life and freedom. Story 5. Keeping me in our house all the time has resulted in me having no life, friends, or social skills. Story 6. Not believing in me, lying to me, not giving me a chance to do what I want. Story 7. This may be a bit dark, but because I was not taught about consent or that I needed to tell an adult in cases of sexual assault, I did not know until it was too late. Story 8. My family blamed me for their problems from a young age. They still do, even though I have not had contact with them for over a decade. Story 9. They were abusive and beat me every day, even when I was 4 years old. There was no love or care, even when I was sick. They never spoke to me kindly. They only gave orders or scolded. They did not help when my cousin molested me when I was 12. The list is too long. Story 10. Secondhand smoke is no joke. Growing up around parents who smoked constantly led me to develop a lung deformity and a number of health issues. Story 11. They acted proud of me and told me they loved me when I did well in school. But if they caught me watching a show they thought was stupid, they would make fun of me and sometimes insult me for it. They also censored my speech to other adults, telling me not to tell Uncle Jim that I liked Pokemon because he would think I was a baby. Story 12. Treating me like a child. Telling me I am a worthless 5-year-old. Being emotionally abusive. Telling me I am never good enough. Not accepting me as their son. Story 13. My dad disowned me when I was 7. He took all my things, threw them on my mother's lawn, and told me he didn't have a daughter anymore. It still affects me today. Rejection from a parent is one of the most painful experiences a person can have. Story 14. I resent my dad for choosing his second wife over me. It is his life and I will love him unconditionally, but I used to mean everything to him. We were so close and he would have done anything to make me happy. Now a woman who is not related to me by blood can call me shitty at the dinner table in front of the rest of my family and make me feel like I will never be a good enough daughter for over 7 years. Story 15. I cannot say I resent her, but I struggle with not having received the help I needed when I was young. The doctors dismissed my pain, anxiety, and constant illness as me seeking attention, which has contributed to my disability. She also used me as her therapist. She shared things with me at a very young age that she should not have, such as her sadness, being abused, being thrown down the stairs, being beaten, and having her ribs broken. She repeatedly fell for men who abused us. They abused her physically and me mentally. She made me stay with my aunts and cousins even though my cousin was very abusive, and I was told to just deal with it. Story 16. They forced me to work from age 12 while letting my brother coast until he was 18. They may have tried to avoid the same mistake, but they went to the opposite extreme and were too lenient, which made him a couch potato. Story 17. I was raised in the Jehovah's Witnesses cult. I spent my entire childhood sitting in Kingdom Hall meetings and going door to door trying to convert strangers, almost none of whom wanted anything to do with us. There were no holidays or birthday celebrations. I will never get those years back or enjoy experiences that other children had. I resent them for it. Story 18. Every conversation became a lecture about doing well in school and showed no interest in my personality or hobbies, only criticizing them and refusing to acknowledge my dignity. It was always justified as being for the greater good. Story 19. My dad left and did not pay any maintenance, so I had to give my budgie away. I was only 12. I did not start my babysitting and dog walking jobs until I was 13. Otherwise, I could have paid for him myself. He did not even cost that much, But my dad left my mom in so much debt that it was another expense she could not afford while looking after the three of us. I gave him to a friend and felt devastated and jealous that she had him. Story 20. He did not allow me to help manage the family farm until it was too far gone to save. I wanted to be involved, but my father would not share control, so I made other choices and developed different interests, even though all I ever wanted was to farm. Story 21. My mother walked in on me being sexually assaulted when I was around 6. She did nothing and continued to bring me around those people, allowing the assaults to continue. As an adult, I confronted her and asked why she had done nothing. Her response was that it was part of life. I forgave her for being an addict and for being a terrible mother who chose drugs and men, but I will never forgive her for that. She has been cut off for 2 years. Story 22. The list is too long to include everything here, so I will list the things my parents did that I resent and that emotionally scarred me. Fair warning, some of this is dark. Here are the top 5 things my parents put me through that I resent them for. 1. My dad got drunk and screamed at me. 2. My mom constantly criticized me and belittled my interests and hobbies. 3. My mom was verbally and psychologically abusive, including gaslighting and blaming me. 4. My mom blamed me for her behavior and refused to take responsibility. She would not admit she was wrong, projected her insecurities onto me, reacted with extreme tantrums when confronted, and never apologized. Her behavior reflected a superiority complex and narcissism. 5. The most damaging event happened when I was 12. She pulled a knife on me and threatened to cut off my hand and kill me, saying she was tired of my behavior. I was in the corner of the shower, having a panic attack, convinced I would die that night. After pleading for what felt like an eternity, she screamed that everything was my fault and said many hateful things. She then left the bathroom. I ran to my bedroom, locked the door, and pushed the dresser against it. The next morning, she did not speak to me, and she never apologized. I have tried to block that memory, but I think about it occasionally, and it will likely never go away. Story 23. I hate to be cliché, but they're shoving their beliefs down my throat. I'm undiagnosed but seeking a screening for autism. I was punished for my sensory processing differences, my mannerisms, and my lack of social cues, whether that punishment was physical harm or being forced to wear something that aggravated my sensory issues and claustrophobia. My family made me out to be a horrible child and a horrible person. They called it unbiblical, saying I was not honoring my father and mother, and called it sinful when I misbehaved. Once I got sick, they told me it was God punishing me. It was cruel. I was a child. I have blocked my sister. I live with my parents because of my condition until I can find another way. I'm so frustrated. Yes, I resent them. It was mental, emotional, and physical torture my whole life. Even now, when I have narcoleptic spells and fall asleep, every time I wake up I feel sick to my stomach, like I did something wrong. I don't know how to shake it. They made me feel awful for existing my whole life, my entire family. I just want to leave, be myself, and heal. I'm tired of being blamed for my conditions and of being belittled and abused. I want to be around people who acknowledge that my neurodivergence is okay. I feel guilty for wanting that, but I honestly want to be around people who are not religious. I'm so frustrated. I didn't expect to write so much. Clearly, I needed it. I appreciate you, Reddit. Story 24. I am never going to have such a cool kid. Story 25. Decades of verbal abuse left me with no confidence when my mother passed away. Story 26. I am kept sheltered and not allowed to take responsibility or make decisions. Now in my late 30s, I avoid responsibility and struggle with decision-making. Story 27. My dad was not there when we needed him. Now we are grown up and he needs us, so he is back. We still take care of him because we are decent human beings, but he keeps creating one problem after another and making our lives hell. Story 28. How easy they had it compared to the current cost of living and the wage stagnation my generation now faces. My parents mortgaged a house that cost $38,000 and is now worth $450,000. Story 29. Thanks to Mom for cultivating the divide between my siblings and me throughout our lives. Story 30. I was sexually assaulted at age 7 by a 15-year-old girl. Because I was a boy, my parents blamed me. I was punished. I understand they did not know what to do, but counseling might have helped. Story 31. Both were bad parents. Each brought their own toxic upbringing to the relationship, and neither had any business raising children. My brother and I have worked hard so we do not become abusive or neglectful with our own children the way our parents were. My father died some time ago, and I have had no contact with my mother for several years. My brother still talks to her. He is very upset with her ongoing racism and her outdated opinions about how he should raise his child, yet she has not been as nasty with him as she was with me, so he continues the relationship. She pretends I never existed, which is okay with me. Story 32. Because they did not get the help they needed when they were younger, I am leading my whole family in starting therapy and asking for help when needed. They still look away and cannot accept help until it is right in front of them. I was told I am a generational cycle breaker. So what? Story 33. I resent my father for the way he treated me, and I resent my mother for allowing it for so long. Story 34. I do not resent them, but I wish they were more expressive about their feelings, which ultimately became part of my personality. I wish they were more involved and took more interest in my life. Sometimes it feels like I do not know them at all, and they do not know me either. I understand all the hard work and sacrifices they made despite not being literate. Story 35. Staring aimlessly and not considering how I would be affected by their separation. A lot of things could have been avoided. Story 36. They did not do the bare minimum required to raise a mentally stable human being, had a child on a whim because babies are cute, and then got mad when that same person experienced mental health and self-worth issues. They also regularly told me that I would never achieve my dreams because I was not good at anything. They told me to stop crying when I found out my girlfriend had died. Story 37. I was ruthlessly humiliated and belittled about sensitive issues in front of the rest of the family. I still will never understand why my mother thought it would be funny to tell everyone that my past self-harm was stupid. I now dread family events such as Thanksgiving and other holidays. Story 38. They blamed me for their alcoholism and divorce, and then they died 3 months apart in 2019. Story 39. My father chose meth over me and my mother. He treated us very badly throughout my childhood, calling me worthless and a failure from around age 12. He would not work and forced my mother to do everything. We have had nothing to do with him since I turned 18. He took me on drug deals when I was very young, and I spent much of my life around drug houses. Story 40. Mom. For being a helicopter parent and then telling everyone my secrets. Dad. For all the broken promises and missed phone calls. Story 41. They are not teaching me another language they are fluent in. Story 42. I resent my mother for taking me off Ritalin because one of her friends told her it was bad for children when I was in 6th grade. My grades plummeted, I became a problem at school, and I had to operate near burnout just to pass my classes in high school. I saw a psychiatrist after I moved out and told her about it. She prescribed 10 milligrams 3 times a day, and I'm honestly doing better than ever. Story 43. Because my mom was such a people pleaser, she would never defend me when someone wronged me. As a result, I became very aggressive and defensive, lost trust in her as a parent, and largely raised myself. Story 44. I don't resent anyone, but I fucking wish I never existed. Story 45. I was an only child, and my parents refused to let me have a pet. Story 46. This is not as bad as some of the others here, but it did not properly prepare me for the responsibilities of adulthood. My parents did only the bare minimum to keep me alive. They gave me almost no chores, which they should have assigned regularly to teach me the work needed to care for myself. They did not teach practical skills and left everything to school, which focuses on math and science and does not cover valuable life lessons. Now I have to learn adult responsibilities the hard way while dealing with the consequences of past mistakes. Thanks, parents, thanks a lot. Story 47. They are queer-phobic assholes who will probably disown me when they find out. Story 48. Honestly, they had children when they knew they could not afford them. I grew up really poor. set me back a lot, and I still feel the effects today. It hurts the most knowing I will never know what it is like to have a normal childhood. Story 49. I resent my parents for not preparing for economic downturns and for not managing their money wisely. I resent their troubled marriage, my father's alcoholism, and my mother's resentment toward him that influenced my feelings. I also resent my oldest brother for molesting me. Story 50. Favoring my siblings makes me feel like I do not have a voice. Story 51. My mom constantly lets my dad back in despite knowing what type of person he is. I have learned a lot about him and his behavior over the past few months. I do not want him around me anymore. He has been an addict my whole life, and I only found out recently. Story 52. If you are not going to take my side, I want nothing to do with them. That is what my drunk sperm donor said to my mom on the phone because my little sister wanted to get a piercing the next day. I have not stayed at his house, texted, or called him since. This happened last year, and he still wonders why I do not want to go to his house or contact him. Story 53. Resentment is a strong word, but I wish they had done a neuropsychological assessment when I was very young, or at least insisted on therapy after my first severe case of bullying. We had the resources to do it, and it would have saved me a lot of trauma by helping me understand that I am autistic. Story 54. They treated me as free labor and unfairly, as if I could do nothing worthwhile while my brothers could do no wrong because I was the firstborn. The difference in punishment was stark. One brother had a shoplifting streak and only received a verbal reprimand, while I received brutal spankings for minor issues. Story 55. Reading some of these, I know how lucky I am. My parents are pretty great. Any resentments I have are petty by comparison. In their 20s, my cousins all migrated to various parts of the country. At the time, our parents were in pretty good health. Did not leave because I had no desire to. Now I am nearly 40 and sometimes think I would not mind picking up and moving somewhere else. But both of my parents have health issues and I am an only child. They also insist on owning the latest technology despite not knowing how to use it. As a result, I visit multiple times per week. Realistically, I cannot even entertain the idea of leaving. There is a potential job opportunity that requires travel twice per month that interests me, but even that feels like too much. I'm 2 days into a vacation and I already had to walk them through something tech-related over the phone, not to mention the physical things I do for them since they should not be doing them themselves. I hate that I have to hold myself back from opportunities. Story 56. My mom treated me as if I owed her my life, even though she made me feel unwanted, humiliated, and physically punished. My dad never paid child support. He disappeared and then reappeared when I became an adult, expecting me to spend money to travel to his city and spend time with his daughters, my half-siblings. Story 57. My mother was abusive. My father knew and did nothing because he was afraid it would hurt his reputation in the church. Story 58. By bringing me into this life, they caused me a horrific childhood and left scars throughout my adult life. Story 59. Mom and dad split when my sister and I were young. Dad remarried. His wife had a child from a previous marriage, and they also had a child together. From a young age, it was obvious that my step-sibling and my half-sibling were favored more than my sister and me. I later learned it was obvious to people outside the family as well. My dad never took an interest in what I liked and even encouraged me to abandon my interests a few times. Growing up in the 1990s, my dad and stepmother would take us to malls and stores during the holiday season to get items on our wish lists. I always felt rushed and could not take time to look at the things I wanted, even though that was the purpose of the trip. I am almost 40. I have only recently realized and accepted that I will never have the kind of relationship with my dad that my half-brother does. It feels like I do not have any relationship with him at all. He recently retired. He had been talking about it for years, but I learned about his final day from someone else only 2 weeks beforehand. My stepmother arranged a low-key retirement dinner at one of his favorite restaurants. I was invited a few days before and had to say no because I had to work. There was zero consideration. I felt deeply hurt. Story 60. Nothing because without them I would not be where I am today. I love them. Story 61. Nothing. They were human and flawed. They made mistakes, sometimes big ones. They were also good and brilliant, and they did the best they could. Respect. My life is my responsibility. Resentment would be wasted energy. Story 62. I resent my mother for being overprotective while not protecting me from mental and verbal abuse. I am the older brother of two little sisters and one little brother. My mother was very strict about activities I wanted to do during my teen years. She forbade me from going outside with friends or hanging out with them, which caused them to lose interest in being friends with me. It became worse when she began dating my little brother's father. We had different fathers and mine was not around. He acted like a father to his son and my little sisters but never spoke to me except to say negative, uncalled for things. He verbally abused me, saying I would never be anything or amount to anything and that I would never have a girlfriend, right in front of my mother, and she never said a word to protect me. All of this left me with self-doubt, low confidence, and insecurity that I am still working on today. I do not hate my mother. I love her. But there are times when I go months without speaking to her because of this. Story 63. That is not a great question, especially since it is nearly Thanksgiving. My parents did their best. Now, as an older adult, I am grateful for the path they set me on. They made me responsible for my own growth and taught me to work hard to achieve my goals. Story 64. My mom never told me anything about my dad. She only mentioned his name once by accident. He knew she was pregnant, and she returned to my grandparents' home where I grew up. I recently connected with him. He is in his 70s, and I am meeting my extended family I never knew for Thanksgiving. Story 65. They did their best in a difficult situation. They did not have cell phones, microwave ovens, or daycare yet. They made do. Story 66. Their insistence on church attendance was suffocating. I hated it. 52 Sundays a year for 15 years. That is a lot of free time from school taken away. While my friends woke up late, had sleepovers, went to the beach, played sports, lazed about, and had fun, I was stuck nearly all day in a boring, soul-sucking church jail. That Sunday time did not include Thursday afternoon choir practice and countless other church activities. I finally escaped at 17 when my dad was caught in a 20-year affair with a woman in the choir. What a sham. Story 67. The only thing I truly resent my parents for is forbidding me to see Metallica in 1998, just because I had an ear infection 3 months earlier, while they bought my brother tickets to a mosh pit. Story 68. Everything was fine until my mother died. My father completely checked out as a parent. He was not abusive or neglectful per se, but he emotionally withdrew, and my sister and I had to grow up very quickly. I honestly would not trust him to water a plant. Story 69. I can't remember my parents hugging me even once, or saying I love you while they hugged me. I'm the opposite with my kids. Story 70. I started to write stuff, but realized I would be here all day. Man, do I need therapy. Story 71. They told me I was allergic to cream cheese. I believed them for years. Story 72. My parents never accepted that I am an adult and that I make my own choices. They love me, but they always doubt my decisions and try to convince me to do the opposite, even though I am doing much better than they are financially and socially. My parents also never taught me adult skills such as cooking, managing my finances, personal care, and social skills, so I had to learn by trial and error. Unfortunately, it took me a long time, and I did not become a fully functional adult until I was about 30. Story 73. I did not buy a beach house when they were so cheap so I could inherit it. Story 74. They were so strict. Any noise was not tolerated, and I still remember being yelled at in front of my friends for laughing too much or being too goofy at my 7th birthday party. I am sure this is why I became introverted and a loner for most of my school years. I did not start dating until college. To this day, I still clam up and usually let everyone else do the talking. I cannot stand noisy, crowded places. I guess being withdrawn sums it up. Story 75. The beatings, the screaming, the moments of silence that were somehow scarier than anything else. They left me constantly on edge, regardless of the environment, to this day. Story 76. The beatings taught me to be fearful and withdrawn from everyone and everything. Story 77. Because she bossed me around, I developed severely low self-esteem. Story 78. My mental health has suffered. They are both narcissists. My father is at least trying to do better, while my mother, on the other hand, is immature. Story 79. They were not strict with me in school. I was a good student but could have been better. They seemed satisfied with a student who earned a C+. Story 80. It's not so much the case anymore. I was conceived non-consensually, and I was angry at my mother for a long time because she chose not to abort me, only to let me live with a sexually, spiritually, emotionally, and physically abusive narcissist who was not even my biological father. Story 81. They would not help me escape an abusive relationship when I tried to leave. I asked for help and was told no. I became unhoused and addicted to drugs on the street. Growing up, they constantly promised to support me and help me when I needed them. But the one time I desperately needed their help, I got nothing. Story 82. Moving constantly, being torn away from friends and activities until I shut down. Story 83. They did not listen to me and shouted uncontrollably whenever I disagreed. I learned to shut down and wait until they were done before agreeing so I could leave. Story 84. I resent my deadbeat father for consistently choosing his abusive girlfriend over me since I was a child. Story 85. My parents did not come to any of my school events because they had already done that when my older brother was in school. I was the only kid on the football field who did not have a parent with them for senior night, and it felt awful. Story 86. I thought it was best to attend a school with 20 students per grade. Story 87. My mom had my cat disposed of when I was 17 instead of letting me pay her back the $45 it cost to get her ashes. Story 88. You are not telling me who my biological father is. That said, I love the only father I know, who raised me from 6 months of age. Story 89. My dog was shot in a fit of rage in front of me. All of my dogs were shot because we left. Story 90. They mistreated my little brother, driving him to use drugs and to befriend the man who ultimately killed him. Story 91. It upsets me when someone claims they never raised a hand to hit their children. As an older person, I can only ask myself what goes through their heads when they lie about it in front of me. I remember the countless times I suffered disproportionate corporal punishment justified by traditional teaching and was locked in rooms. Story 92. They both have childhood trauma related to loved ones in illness, especially my mom, so my body became a source of great anxiety for them. There is always something I should be doing with it that I am not. Story 93. I was limited in how much time I could spend on the computer, even as a teenager when I made it clear I wanted a career in computers and had a business card for personal computer repair services. Story 94. They raised me in an environment of religious paranoia and irrational thoughts resembling obsessive-compulsive disorder, based on their distorted beliefs. I am finally finding my way out after 30 years, but it is nearly impossible. Story 95. The holes are small. I had my ears pierced when I was 2. Now the piercings are uneven and I cannot wear studs. Story 96. My mom used meth from when I was about 10 to 16 years old. When I was finally old enough, I moved out. Now, at 23, I have a wife and a newborn. My mom, now 2 years clean, wonders why I will not let her near my child. I resent her for assuming she did nothing wrong while I was growing up and for causing problems because she believes she deserves to see my daughter solely because I am her son. Story 97. They never taught me empathy, respect, or humility. I had to learn those from a friend after I did not greet his mother. She resented me for life, and his brother formed twisted assumptions about me. I was stoic and shut down. I felt empty and did not feel sadness even when everything crashed down on me during my worst days of high school because I kept everything to myself. When I could not take it anymore, I burst into tears, and that made me feel much more comfortable. Now I am more emotionally vulnerable, but at least I can feel the world around me instead of being the empty husk I used to be. Story 98. There is one thing in particular that irks me. I had a car issue, and my dad, being a mechanic, fixed it without telling me. A month later he told me and refused to give my keys back. I appreciate that he was helping and that he saved me some money. A few weeks later, a friend and I headed over to my parents' house, where my car was. My dad was home on his lunch break. We talked, and he eventually let me see my keys so I could show my friend my car. He had to leave for work and made me promise not to take it. After he left, I took the car. At the time, I was staying with a friend in another town. While I was at work, my dad came to my workplace, located my car, used a spare key he had made to open it, and removed the fuses so I could not drive it. I did not have enough money to buy new fuses, so I was without a car for 2 more months. Story 99. Teaching me ethics has not been worth it. I have consistently seen the worst, most poorly behaved people rewarded while those who try to be good are taken advantage of. Story 100. I blame my dad for choosing junk food over listening to his doctors. He died in 2013 at age 55 from a heart attack. He missed every milestone after high school, including the birth of my niece and my marriage. My sister's wedding doesn't count because she chose to have no guests. Story 101. My mother did not teach me how to take basic care of myself. My father essentially abused me, brought another child into the situation, and caused my whole family to leave me. Story 102. I am 43 and still think about the physical abuse my father, a retired police officer, inflicted on my mother and me. I now resent my mother more than him for never leaving and for not allowing me to have a better life without him. Her excuse was that he would kill us. Story 103. I grew up without ever knowing what unconditional love is. I ruined most of my relationships and my marriage because I couldn't accept that anyone could love me no matter what. Story 104. They used me as a punching bag for their anger toward one another. Story 105. I resent my mom for never making an effort to create an emotional connection. I am in my 20s now and have serious problems connecting with people on an emotional level because I never had one. Story 106. They kicked me out of the house and cut off my finances at 18 when I refused to attend their religion's university, yet they housed and fully funded all of my younger siblings, including those who also refused. Story 107. They did not let me take on responsibilities until I was 20. I should have started at 18. I am an only child, so this was crucial. Story 108. They raised us in a religion that was a hair's breadth from a cult and homeschooled us. Story 109. It boils down to them drinking too much and getting yelled at when they tried to vent while drunk. Story 110. I do not resent my parents, but I wish I had not been sent to boarding school in 9th grade and had instead attended high school at home in Center City, Philadelphia. We moved to Philadelphia for my father's job, but my parents were leery of the schools, so I went to boarding school in Virginia. Center City would have been a better experience. Story 111. I think having things taken away from me when I get a single bad grade that does not affect my final grade. Story 112. There really is enough going on in the world right now without resenting the past. Story 113. They are amazing and have treated me well every time, but maybe they could have tried harder to send me on the United States trip in 10th grade. Story 114. Do not put me in sports or other active activities. Cultivating a regular workout routine in my life has been extremely difficult. Story 115. I was raised by abusive drug addicts. I have severe psychological problems that have held me back for all 32 years of my life. I would not wish my childhood on anyone. I do not have a worst enemy. I am a pathological people pleaser because I never experienced the unconditional love of a parent. Story 116. Avoiding all difficult and uncomfortable topics, such as finances, sex, dating, and related subjects. Story 117. My mother has admitted that she has had an attitude toward me since I was 10. She engaged in low-grade gaslighting. My father died when I was 14, and I never had a proper father figure. He was verbally abusive toward me. Story 118. They never gave much encouragement for any talent or interest I wanted to pursue. My first counselor interviewed them and said flatly that either they did not know how or they did not think it was part of what a parent does. I forgave them, but I think of all I could have given them if I had made a decent go of it with a little emotional support. Story 119. They married when they were not in a good financial state and sold items that would have made me rich now. Story 120. They are ignoring my autism. I blame my mother, not my father. My father has undiagnosed autism and is not aware of it. Story 121. How my parents treated me like the eldest, even though I am the youngest, set many expectations for me to meet and pampered my older brother, leaving me to fend for myself until now. Story 122. Poor parenting, poor choices, and a failure to teach me anything really useful in life. Story 123. For the longest time, I thought it was normal to never be hugged or told I was loved by my parents unless it was bad news. Then I saw my friends' parents hugging them and saying I love you at random times. Now, as an adult, I can hardly handle being hugged, touched, or hearing people express how much they care for me. I almost always get an immediate pit of anxiety in my stomach because I assume I am about to be told something bad. It has made relationships and friendships hard to maintain. Story 124. If I did resent my parents, it would be for throwing away my chicken tenders a few years ago, for yelling at me when I was afraid to tell them I had fleas in my room for weeks, and for either ignoring or insulting me while refusing to let me go outside that one summer. It honestly felt like purgatory. Story 125. I was forced to figure out my life after they stopped supporting me financially because I began hormone replacement therapy. They had denied my transgender identity for years, but I never thought they would abandon me when I had just turned 21. It has been a hard year trying to pay for school and support myself. I know this is not an uncommon experience and many people have faced it, but my parents have the money and were willing to help me until they discovered I took a step toward my own happiness that they disagreed with. Story 126. Thinking they are always right, as if they were God, when they are not. Story 127. I was not taught anything. I raised myself. Story 128. Lack of encouragement and love. I had to go through extensive eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. All good. Fuck them. Story 129. Religion. Kind of awful to have a kid struggling to convince themselves they can be straight so they won't burn in hell for all eternity. Americana. Story 130. Abuse, physical but especially mental, neglect, and being left with nothing to start my life with. The resentment is now barely there. I no longer care. Life moves on whether you had a messed up childhood or not. Adapt and grow or languish and die. Story 131. I suffered emotional and mental abuse as a child and never really received maternal love. There was physical abuse as well. If you asked me about a happy memory, I would struggle because I can only remember being yelled at and hit. It has changed me so much, and I sometimes wonder what I would have been like if I had been treated differently. I stopped telling my mother anything because she did not care or listen to me. Parents must be accountable for their words and actions toward their children. I will never understand how someone can stand and yell at a child who is already crying and upset. Story 132. My dad was in the military for most of my childhood. This, combined with other family issues, complicated my upbringing. Story 133. My mother meant well, but I think she is partly the reason I am terrified of accepting gifts or asking for things I genuinely need. Cannot handle it. Story 134. They were never there for my brothers and me. My mother was narcissistic and sadistic. She took pleasure in the physical abuse we endured growing up. My father used to physically abuse me as well when he was drunk. They projected their problems onto us to make themselves feel better. Both my mother and my father were very manipulative. They used triangulation. I could not give two fucks if they died tomorrow. Story 135. My father has become the most disrespectful, hostile, and self-absorbed person I have ever met. I live with him and my grandmother because they cannot live alone due to health issues, and neither can work. Not a day goes by without him finding a reason to verbally attack my grandmother, and he frequently insults me, calling me selfish and lazy when things do not go his way. He often uses his rapidly deteriorating health to gain sympathy. Story 136. I don't resent my dad, but I resent my mom for beating me after I moved in with her, when my father died at 12, and for abandoning me at 16. Story 137. Nothing, really. My siblings are thriving. I am just a failure. Story 138. I was not taught anything about the real world. I do not know how credit scores work. I do not know what the annual percentage rate means. I do not know what a mortgage is. I do not know how to buy a car. I do not know how to do simple car maintenance, such as changing tires and checking oil and fluids. I was not taught the importance and purpose of school, so I would not have carelessly lowered my grades at an early age. The list goes on. I still have not learned many of these things, and I am almost 31 years old. I would include how to format a paragraph, but that is more the responsibility of the education system than of my parents. Story 139. I do not exactly resent them, but I wish they had known about autism in my early childhood and that I had been diagnosed much sooner. I actually found out by accident when I was 11 from my English teacher. She said I reminded her of her autistic son and that I should tell my mother. I did. We went to a psychiatrist and, sure enough, my quirks and oddities made sense. The tiptoeing, what others saw as rudeness, my obsession with space, why I had no friends, and why I felt like an outcast. If people had known what to look for earlier, I could have accessed support and coping strategies sooner and would not have struggled as much in life. It was not entirely their fault, though. Story 140. I resent my mother for giving my sister and me the silent treatment as children whenever we did anything wrong, which was often. I resent my father for never speaking up or defending us because he was afraid of my mother. As adults, we cut them both off and have never looked back. Story 141. My mother limited my freedom as a child. My father provided almost no socialization. Both actions severely stunted my personal growth and subsequently undermined my confidence and agency. Story 142. They raised me in their religion and then prioritized their faith over me and some of my siblings. Story 143. My dad was abandoned by his mother when he was young. When he got married and was expecting his third son, I am the second, the Bosnian War happened, and the house they built was bombed flat. They had to flee to a distant country. He and my mother were really traumatized, I believe, and much of it spilled over onto us. They argued and fought throughout my upbringing. There was always alcohol and too much violence toward us boys. We were 3. For some reason he especially did not like me. I do not resent him. It is more that I resent how everything turned out. Story 144. I was forced to be the family's mistake baby, the responsible older sibling who was not allowed to have my own activities because I was supposedly not responsible enough. For example, when I begged to join band, they said I was too irresponsible and lazy, even though I worked nearly every night after school. Story 145. I do not resent my dad for it. It is not really his fault. I am fairly certain he passed on a genetic predisposition to addiction. His father was an alcoholic, my father is an alcoholic, and I have my own addictions and become addicted very easily. I do not blame the environment I grew up in for that, since he was not around much after my parents separated. Story 146. They lied about the reason for their divorce and made me hate my father when in reality it was my mom's fault. This led to daddy issues and severe trauma from being groomed online. I feel that if my mom had not let my dad take the blame, things could have been different and I might have had a healthier childhood. Story 147. Long story short, my father walked out of my life when I was 5 or younger, before I really knew him. That made my mother struggle and changed my childhood. Caused issues, mostly not learning how to be a man, I suppose. I did not have the guidance to become what I wanted to be. I had people who were somewhat father figures, like my grandfather, but it was not the same. My mom got together with a man when I was 7. They married and had my younger brother. He was nice at first and made good money, which gave us an upper-middle-class lifestyle. I played sports and did many activities. He was always trying to help and teach me, but once my brother got old enough, I became invisible to him. He treated me like his own child until he could build a relationship with his own son. He shut me out. He and my mom fought a lot. I fought him. They divorced after 10 years. My mom used to be the steady parent. She worked, kept the household running, and made sure we were okay. After the divorce, she had a midlife crisis. She sold the house we grew up in, bought a Harley, and did not work for a couple of years. She rode and traveled but mostly stayed nearby. Later she moved away, returned to work, and bought a house. Now she is depressed. I work away from home in various mostly remote locations. My family is pretty split apart. I miss the good parts of my childhood. I am sad about how I grew up and wish it had been different because I can see how it could have been. I cannot really complain. I have a life, more or less, but that is a different story. Story 148. I don't resent my parents, but I wish my dad had taught me how to cope and express myself correctly instead of me bottling things up, because growing up I was told that men do not get emotional like girls. I feel like it turned me into an emotionally distant softie, which many women are not fond of. I still don't know how to regulate my emotions. I feel like his negativity growing up rubbed off on me, especially in how he responds to adversity. I began to pick up his habit of rehearsing yelling at scenarios in his head. Also, his opinions of women were very outdated. I never saw him be romantic toward any woman, and because he resented my mom for arbitrary reasons, anytime a girl got mad at me I used to take it personally, just like him, and respond with passive aggression. I will always love him, but as a role model his personality does not connect with most people. I struggle to realize that his way of talking and treating people was not the norm. It was toxic at times. Story 149. My biological father wanted to abort me but now wants to act like my father or grandfather. Even though he was never a parent to me, no matter how much I wanted him to be. I hold a lot against my mother. Some things are petty, like the broken promises. Other things are serious. I do not think I will ever forgive her for the years of mental and physical abuse. When she was not treating me like a punching bag, she would forget me in places. She openly laughs and brags about accidentally leaving me at Walmart as a child on multiple occasions. Story 150. They chose alcohol over my mom and me and then stole all of my college savings. Story 151. I am not being forced to learn piano, guitar, or drums like my other school friends. Story 152. My upbringing was very different compared to my younger brothers. I was the guinea pig, and they consistently favored him over me in every aspect. Story 153. She married that man and had my sister and me with him. We could have lived so much better if she had stayed in Germany. Oh well, we are better off without him. Story 154. My mom died when I was 11 and my dad when I was 16. I am 26, almost 27 now. I was young enough that I do not remember much about my mother. I remember that she loved me more than anything, and I also remember signs of deep depression. After my mother died, my father became extremely alcoholic and abusive. Never physical, but verbal and emotional. Several times he told me I was a failed abortion. I was not. He also said my mother was a prostitute. She was not. He even used to call me his little slave boy and send me to fetch anything he needed, usually another beer, among many other things. I still resent him for that so much. I hate it because he was always drunk when I got home from school, and that is when he would start yelling. He often kept me up for hours. Sometimes I was lucky to go to bed before 3 a.m. on a school night. What bothers me most is that he was a completely different person when sober. If you told him the things he said when drunk, he would cry and apologize, but then he would get so mad, hate himself, and start drinking again to deal with it. I am at the age where I am beginning to understand why he acted the way he did in some situations. There are, of course, things I will never be able to forgive. I still miss them both more and more every day. Story 155. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. When I was a child, they thought I was hyperactive. They took me to a doctor once when I was about 5, but the doctor said I was not hyperactive. My family assumed I was just naughty or difficult. I was diagnosed. At age 35, my life could have been easier. Also, when I was a child, I attended additional skills training after taking a test. A month later, I said I did not want to continue. They said, "Okay, then do not." That was a horrible decision. I was about 12. Story 156. I don't necessarily resent them, but they had me even though my dad didn't really want to, and my mom was mentally unstable and did not realize how unstable she was until it was too late. She is still alive. They both love me and try their best, though. Story 157. Voting for Brexit and Boris Johnson. There is zero remorse from them, and if I have the slightest issue with it, that is on me because I am a radicalized leftist. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.